Admiral Zexthara had conquered 47 star systems in her 300-year military career. She had faced the crystalline hive minds of KEPLER 442, the energy beings of the Vega Collective, and the mechanical swarms of the Iron Worlds. None had prepared her for the absolute impossibility of fighting humans. The first engagement had been routine, or so she thought. The Terran Defense Fleet had assembled in standard formation around their colony world of New Geneva, their primitive fusion drives glowing like dying embers against the void. Zexthara's dreadnought Inevitable Conquest materialized from hyperspace alongside 200 ships of the galactic hegemony, their hulls gleaming with adaptive armor and reality-warping weapons that had shattered civilizations. "Target their command vessel," Zexthara ordered, her 4 eyes focusing on the tactical display. "Standard suppression pattern. We'll accept their surrender within the hour." The human flagship, a blocky, utilitarian design they called the UES Determination, sat motionless in the center of their formation. Zexthara had read the intelligence reports. Humans were a young species, barely 3 centuries into space travel. Their technology was crude, their tactics predictable, their ships held together with what their own engineers called duct tape and prayers. The plasma lance fired from Inevitable Conquest should have vaporized the human ship instantly. Instead, it passed harmlessly through empty space. Targeting malfunction? Zexthara's tactical officer, Lieutenant Korth, checked his instruments with growing confusion. "No, Admiral. Perfect lock. The beam struck their vessel directly." "Then why is it still there?" I don't know, Admiral." Zexthara watched in growing bewilderment as the UES Determination flickered like a dying hologram, then solidified again. The human ship hadn't moved. It hadn't activated shields. The plasma lance had simply passed through it as if it weren't there. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human flagship," she commanded. 200 energy weapons discharged simultaneously, enough firepower to crack a moon. The beams converged on the human ship's position and struck. Nothing. The Determination phased in and out of visibility like it was dancing between dimensions. Then the humans fired back. The return volley came from ships that shouldn't have been able to reach them. The human fleet had been arranged in a defensive sphere around New Geneva, but now weapons fire was coming from directly behind Zexthara's formation. She spun to the rear tactical display and felt her heart skip a beat. 5 human destroyers hung in space less than 1,000 kilometers from her dreadnought's engines. They hadn't been there moments before. They couldn't have moved there. Her sensors would have detected any ship at faster-than-light speeds. How did they? Zexthara began, then stopped as she realized the human ships were becoming translucent, fading, like ghosts. The HSS Phantom fired a spread of kinetic projectiles that somehow bypassed Inevitable Conquest shields entirely, punching holes through the dreadnought's armor as if it were paper. Warning klaxons blared as atmospheric pressure dropped in 12 sections. "Admiral!" Korth's voice cracked with panic. "The humans are inside our formation! They're everywhere!" The tactical display looked like a fever dream. Human ships appeared and disappeared throughout the hegemony fleet, firing from impossible angles before vanishing like mirages. Some seemed to occupy the same space as hegemony vessels without collision. Others fired from positions that defied 3-dimensional geometry. The UES Wraith materialized inside the heavy cruiser Domination, its hull somehow coexisting with the alien ship's superstructure. When it fired its main cannon, the energy discharge erupted from within Domination's bridge, vaporizing the command crew instantly. "What kind of technology is this?" Zexthara demanded as her flagship shuddered under impacts from weapons that shouldn't have been able to touch them. "How are they phasing through solid matter?" "Unknown, Admiral. Our physics models can't account for this. It's like they're existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously." A human corvette, the UES Poltergeist, drifted slowly through Inevitable Conquest's main hull, its weapons firing continuously as it passed. Each shot found critical systems with impossible precision, as if the human gunners could see through solid bulkheads. Zexthara's chief science officer, Dr. Helix, burst onto the bridge with terror in his compound eyes. "Admiral, I've been analyzing their dimensional signatures. The humans aren't using conventional phase technology. They're somehow existing in a quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent in our reality." "That's impossible. Nothing organic can survive dimensional flux." That's what I thought too, but look at this. Dr. Helix threw the sensor data onto the main screen. Their ships aren't just phasing through space. They're phasing through the fundamental structure of reality itself. They exist in multiple probability states at once. When we fire at them, we're only hitting one possible version of their location. As if to demonstrate his point, the UES determination suddenly appeared directly above inevitable conquest, its hull overlapping with the dreadnought's command tower. The human ship fired a single, precise shot that passed through 6 decks of armor plating without touching them, then detonated inside the reactor core. "Abandon ship!" Zexthera screamed as her flagship began to break apart. "All hands to escape pods!" But even the evacuation was a nightmare. Human ships materialized inside the hangar bays, their weapons cutting down fleeing crew members. Others phased through the escape pods themselves, their occupants dying as human energy weapons fired from within their own cramped shelters. The UES Banshee drifted through the debris field, its ghostly form flickering between dimensions as it hunted down survivors. Zexthera watched in horror from her own escape pod as the human ship passed through 3 different wrecks simultaneously, firing from impossible angles. Of the 200 ships in her fleet, only 37 made it to hyperspace. The rest were destroyed by an enemy that fought like nothing in the known galaxy. Ships that existed everywhere and nowhere, weapons that fired from inside solid matter, tactics that defied the basic laws of physics. 3 days later, Zexthera stood before the high command of the galactic hegemony, her military decorations feeling like weights around her neck. The debriefing room was silent, except for the soft hum of recording devices capturing her account of the impossible battle. "Admiral," High Commander Vexnel's voice was carefully neutral, "you're asking us to believe that the humans have developed technology that allows them to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. I'm telling you what I witnessed, sir. Their ships phase through solid matter. They fire from positions that don't exist in 3-dimensional space. They can be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The humans are a primitive species. They've barely mastered faster-than-light travel. How could they have developed reality manipulation technology that surpasses our own?" Zexthera pulled up the sensor recordings, though she knew how insane they would look. Ships occupying the same space. Energy weapons firing from inside solid hulls. Vessels that existed in multiple locations simultaneously. Woo. I don't know how they did it, sir, but I know what I saw. We're not fighting a conventional space navy. We're fighting something that exists outside the normal rules of reality. High Commander Vexnel studied the recordings with growing unease. The data was impossible, but it was also undeniably real. The sensor logs from 37 different ships all told the same impossible story. "Dr. Quinn," Vexnel addressed the hegemony's chief physicist, "is such technology theoretically possible?" Dr. Quinn's tentacles writhed nervously as she considered the question. Quantum superposition on a macroscopic scale should be impossible for complex structures, let alone living beings. The decoherence alone would tear apart any matter larger than a subatomic particle. Yet, the sensor data is consistent across all ships. Either we're dealing with technology beyond our understanding, or the humans have somehow overcome the fundamental barriers to macro-quantum manipulation. The debriefing continued for hours, with physicists and military strategists struggling to comprehend an enemy that fought with impossible weapons using incomprehensible tactics. Every analysis reached the same conclusion. The humans shouldn't be able to do what they were doing, but they were doing it anyway. "What are your recommendations, Admiral?" Vexnel asked finally. Zexthera had spent 3 sleepless days considering that question. "We need to completely rethink our approach, sir. Standard fleet tactics are useless against an enemy that can phase through our ships. Our weapons can't hit targets that exist in quantum superposition. Our defenses are meaningless against weapons that fire from inside our own hulls. Are you suggesting we withdraw from human space? I'm suggesting we figure out how they're doing this before we lose any more fleets. We're not just facing a technologically superior enemy, we're facing one that operates outside the known laws of physics." The silence that followed was profound. The galactic hegemony had never encountered a species they couldn't defeat through superior firepower and tactical doctrine. The humans were forcing them to confront the possibility that raw military might was useless against an enemy that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. "Initiate Protocol 7, Vexnal said finally. "Full scientific analysis of human phase technology. No further military engagements until we understand what we're facing." As the meeting disbanded, Zexthara remained in her chair, staring at the sensor recordings that showed human ships dancing between dimensions like phantoms. Somewhere in human space, engineers and scientists had unlocked secrets that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had never even imagined possible. The question that kept her awake at night was simple. If humans could make their ships phase through reality itself, what else could they do? The answer, she feared, would redefine the very nature of warfare in the galaxy. Dr. Quinn's laboratory had become the most classified facility in hegemony space, a maze of quantum computers and reality manipulation equipment, all focused on a single goal: understanding how humans had broken the fundamental laws of physics. The captured wreckage of a human phase drive sat in the center of the lab like an alien altar, its twisted metal seeming to bend light around itself, even when powered down. "Still nothing?" Admiral Zexthara asked as she entered the sterile chamber. 6 months of failure had aged her visibly, her once pristine uniform now bearing the wrinkles of countless sleepless nights. Dr. Quinn's tentacles drooped with exhaustion. "Every analysis yields the same result. The technology shouldn't work. The quantum matrices are crude, almost primitive compared to our own dimensional manipulation systems. Yet somehow they achieve stable macro superposition with efficiency rates that exceed our most advanced theoretical models." Zexthara approached the wreckage, noting how her reflections seemed to fragment across its surface. "Have you tried reverse engineering the power systems? That's where it gets truly bizarre." Dr. Quinn activated a holographic display showing the human drive's internal structure. The power requirements for their phase technology should be enormous. At least 3 fusion reactors to maintain quantum coherence for a ship of that size. But their energy signature suggests they're running on a single antimatter core, with output barely sufficient for conventional faster-than-light travel. So how are they powering the phase drives? We don't know. The energy has to be coming from somewhere, but our instruments can't detect the source. It's as if they're drawing power from nothing. Before Zexthara could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the laboratory in pulsing red as her communicator crackled to life. "Admiral, this is Station Commander Trixel. We have multiple human signatures approaching at impossible velocities. They're not following standard hyperspace corridors. They appear to be traveling through normal space at speeds exceeding light by factors of 12. Zexthara felt ice form in her stomach. "How many ships?" "Unknown, Admiral. They're phasing in and out of our detection grid. Estimated count ranges from 3 vessels to 300. They seem to exist in fluctuating numbers." "What does that mean?" "I wish I knew, Admiral." Through the laboratory's viewport, Zexthara could see space itself beginning to distort. Reality rippled like water as something massive approached, bending starlight into impossible patterns. Then the human fleet arrived, and the laws of physics seemed to surrender entirely. The lead ship materialized slowly, as if condensing from probability itself. The UES paradox was larger than any vessel the humans had fielded before, a kilometer-long behemoth that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Its hull flickered between solid matter and translucent energy, while weapons ports opened in locations that changed each time Zexthara looked at them. "Station shields to maximum," Commander Trixel's voice carried obvious panic. "All defensive systems online." The human fleet's response was immediate and impossible. Weapons fire erupted from empty space, striking the station's shields from directions that didn't exist. Energy beams curved around the station's defensive barriers, somehow attacking from inside the protected zone without passing through the perimeter. Dr. Quinn stared at her instruments in disbelief. "Admiral, the humans are firing through dimensional fractures. They're creating temporary wounds in space-time and shooting through them. Our shields can't block attacks that bypass 3-dimensional space entirely." The station shuddered as human weapons found their targets with surgical precision. But unlike the devastating assault Zexthara had expected, the attack seemed almost restrained. Critical systems were disabled rather than destroyed, life support remained intact, and the reactor core was carefully avoided. They're not trying to kill us, Zexthara realized. This is a capture operation. As if summoned by her words, human soldiers began materializing throughout the station. They didn't arrive by transport or breach the hull. They simply phased into existence within secured areas, their combat armor flickering with the same dimensional instability as their ships. The hegemony security forces opened fire immediately, but their energy weapons passed harmlessly through the human troops. The invaders existed in quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent, until they chose to interact with solid matter. When they did solidify to return fire, their weapons struck with devastating accuracy before the soldiers phased out again. "All forces fall back to the laboratory," Zexthara commanded, knowing it was futile. How could you fight an enemy that existed everywhere and nowhere? The human boarding parties moved through the station like ghosts, disabling resistance with an efficiency that spoke of intimate knowledge of hegemony technology and tactics. They seemed to know exactly where each defensive position was located, which corridors to avoid, and how to disable critical systems without causing casualties. Within 20 minutes, the station was under complete human control. Zexthara found herself in her own conference room, facing a human officer whose name tag read Colonel Sarah Chen. The woman appeared to be in her 40s by human standards, with graying hair and eyes that held depths Zexthara couldn't fathom. Most disturbing was how the colonel seemed to flicker occasionally, as if she existed in multiple probable states. "Admiral Zexthara," Colonel Chen said in perfect hegemony standard. "Thank you for not ordering your people to fight to the death. It saved lives on both sides." "How do you know our language?" "Our intelligence suggested humans had barely mastered basic translation protocols." Chen smiled, and for a moment her form split into 3 overlapping images before consolidating again. "We know a great deal about the hegemony, Admiral. We've been preparing for this war for much longer than you might think." "Impossible. First contact was only 18 months ago." "First contact from your perspective," Chen corrected gently. "We've been aware of the galactic hegemony for over 2 centuries. We've watched your expansion, studied your tactics, analyzed your technology. We knew this conflict was inevitable." Zexthara felt her worldview cracking. "That's impossible. Our deep space sensors would have detected any human presence in hegemony territory." "Would they?" Chen gestured, and the air around her hand shimmered. "We exist in quantum superposition, Admiral. We've been observing your civilization from dimensional states you can't detect. Every hegemony world, every fleet movement, every strategic planning session, we've been watching from spaces between reality." The implications hit Zexthara like a physical blow. "You've been spying on us for 200 years. "Learning from you," Chen corrected. "Understanding you. We studied every species the hegemony conquered, analyzed every battle, dissected every defeat. We learned that conventional resistance was futile against your military machine. So we developed unconventional solutions." Dr. Quinn, who had been brought to the conference room under guard, spoke up with scientific curiosity overriding fear. "How did you achieve stable macro superposition? The energy requirements alone should be impossible." Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "Dr. Quinn, isn't it? Your papers on dimensional mechanics are quite impressive. You're correct that the energy requirements would be impossible if we were drawing power from this dimension alone." "What do you mean?" "We learned to tap directly into the quantum foam, the fundamental energy that underlies all reality. Instead of fighting the uncertainty principle, we embraced it. Our ships don't exist in multiple dimensions because we force them to. They exist in multiple dimensions because that's their natural state." Zexthara struggled to comprehend what she was hearing. "You're saying your entire civilization exists in quantum superposition?" "Not our entire civilization," Chen said, and her form flickered again. "Just those of us who volunteered for the program. We call ourselves the Probability Core. We exist in all possible states until observation collapses our wave function into a single reality." Dr. Quinn leaned forward, her scientific mind racing. "But consciousness should cause wave function collapse. Self-awareness alone should force you into a single quantum state." "Should, yes. But we discovered that consciousness itself is quantum mechanical. With the right training and technological augmentation, we learned to maintain coherent superposition even while retaining awareness across multiple probability states. Chen paused, studying their expressions. We experience every possible version of reality simultaneously. When we fire our weapons, we see every trajectory. When we move our ships, we know every possible position. We are quantum probability made manifest. The revelation was staggering. Zexthara realized she wasn't just facing a technologically superior enemy, she was confronting an entirely new form of existence. "Why are you telling us this?" she asked. "Because the war is over, Admiral." Chen's voice carried a finality that chilled Zexthara's hearts. "The hegemony's expansion has ended. You will withdraw from human space and cease all aggressive actions against species seeking independence from your empire. The High Command will never agree to such terms. The High Command no longer has a choice." Chen gestured again, and a holographic display materialized, showing the hegemony's core worlds. "While we've been talking, probability core ships have materialized in the heart of your empire. Your capital world, your industrial centers, your military academies, all are currently under observation by forces you cannot detect or engage." The display zoomed in on Hegemony Prime, the Empire's capital world. Zexthara could see the massive orbital defense platforms, the fleet anchorages, the planetary shields that had protected the homeworld for 1,000 years, all seemingly untouched and secure. "I don't see any human ships," she said. "Look closer." Chen enhanced the image, and suddenly Zexthara could see them, ghostly outlines flickering in and out of visibility around every major installation. Hundreds of human vessels existing in quantum superposition, invisible to conventional sensors, but ready to solidify and strike at a moment's notice. "Our ships are inside your defensive perimeters, Admiral, inside your planetary shields. Some are currently occupying the same space as your defense stations, existing in harmless superposition until we choose to collapse their wave functions into destructive reality." Zexthara stared at the display in growing horror. "You could destroy our entire civilization." "We could," Chen agreed, "but we won't. Humanity doesn't seek conquest. We seek coexistence. We want the hegemony to survive, but not as an aggressive empire that devours smaller civilizations. Your expansion ends now, but your species can continue to thrive within your current borders. And if we refuse..." Chen's form split into multiple overlapping images, each one slightly different. Some smiling sadly, others stern with determination, all unified in their resolve. "Then we collapse every possible probability state into the one where the hegemony ceases to exist. We've seen every potential outcome of this conflict across infinite quantum realities. In the timelines where you continue your aggression, your empire falls within a year. In the timelines where you accept our terms, both our civilizations prosper for millennia." The weight of choice pressed down on Zexthara like a collapsing star. "You're asking us to abandon everything our empire stands for." "I'm asking you to evolve beyond it," Chen replied gently. "Just as we evolved beyond conventional existence to meet this threat, the galaxy is vast enough for both conquest and cooperation. Choose cooperation." 3 months later, Hegemony High Command. The emergency session of the Hegemony Council had been in progress for 6 days, with representatives from every member species debating the ultimatum that had effectively ended their empire's expansion overnight. Zexthara sat at the witness table, having recounted her experiences with the human probability core dozens of times. High Commander Vexnal looked older than his 800 years as he addressed the assembly. "The facts are undeniable. Human forces have demonstrated the ability to appear anywhere in hegemony space without warning. They have shown they can strike our most heavily defended positions with impunity. Our military experts have confirmed that conventional defense against quantum superposition attacks is impossible with current technology." Senator Kreshta of the Altarian Collective spoke up, her crystalline form resonating with barely controlled anger. "Are we simply to accept defeat from a species we first encountered 18 months ago? The hegemony has stood for 3 millennia. The alternative," Dr. Quinn interjected from her advisory position, "is extinction. I've analyzed the quantum signatures from human-occupied space. They're not bluffing about their capabilities. They could collapse our entire civilization into a probability state where we never existed." "Impossible!" Senator Vorthak's mechanical voice grated through the chamber. "Retroactive reality manipulation on such a scale would require energy equivalent to a stellar collapse. Under conventional physics, yes, Dr. Quinn agreed. But the humans aren't bound by conventional physics. They've learned to exist as living quantum equations. They can rewrite reality by changing the probability matrices that define existence itself. Admiral Zexthara stood, requesting permission to speak. Honored Council, I've seen what the humans can do. Their Colonel Chen showed me probability maps of our empire's future. Thousands of potential timelines where our continued aggression leads to our destruction. But she also showed me timelines where we adapt, where we learn from their example, where the hegemony becomes something greater than a conquering force. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Vexenal asked. I'm suggesting we do what successful military commanders have always done when faced with superior force. We adapt our strategy. The humans aren't demanding our surrender. They're offering us partnership in a new form of galactic civilization. Senator Grixmal's tentacles writhed with skepticism. Partnership with species that exist in multiple realities simultaneously? How can we trust beings who might not even be fully real? They're more real than we are, Zexthara replied. They exist in every possible state of reality. We only exist in one. They can see consequences we can't imagine, possibilities we've never dreamed of. Perhaps it's time we learned from them instead of trying to conquer them. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The hegemony's military might was useless against an enemy that existed outside the normal parameters of space and time. Their options were adaptation or extinction. The vote was closer than Zexthara had expected, 47 in favor of accepting human terms, 31 against, and 12 abstentions. But it was enough. The galactic hegemony would begin its transformation from an aggressive empire to a cooperative alliance. 1 year later, New Geneva. Admiral Zexthara, now serving as the hegemony's first ambassador to quantum civilizations, stood on the observation deck of the Joint Research Station orbiting the human colony world where the war had begun. Below them, the planet's surface showed the mixed architecture of human and hegemony construction, a symbol of the cooperation that had emerged from conflict. Colonel Chen materialized beside her, her form now stable and solid. The integration projects are proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported. Your people are remarkably adaptable when they're not trying to conquer everyone. Learning quantum mechanics has been challenging, Zexthara admitted. Dr. Quinn assures me that some of our younger scientists are beginning to achieve limited superposition states. It takes time. We've been developing these abilities for over 2 centuries. But your people show promise, especially once they stop thinking of reality as fixed and immutable. Zexthara watched as a hegemony transport approached the station, its hull flickering slightly as the crew practiced the elementary phasing techniques they were learning from human instructors. I still don't understand how you developed this technology so quickly. 2 centuries seems impossibly short for such a fundamental breakthrough. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Who says we developed it quickly? From our perspective, we've been working on quantum consciousness manipulation for subjective millennia. When you exist in multiple timeline states simultaneously, you can experience centuries of research and development in what external observers perceive as mere decades. You've been time-dilating your own development? In a sense, we've been living through every possible research pathway simultaneously, then consolidating the successful branches into our primary timeline. It's not time travel, it's time multiplication. The implications staggered Zexthara anew. Your entire civilization has been accelerating its technological development by existing in quantum superposition. Not our entire civilization, Chen corrected. The majority of humanity still exists in conventional reality. The probability core represents less than 1% of our population, but that 1% has been able to advance human knowledge at an exponential rate by experiencing multiple research timelines simultaneously. A young hegemony scientist approached them, her bioluminescent patches flickering with excitement. Ambassador Zexthara, Colonel Chen, we've achieved a breakthrough in the Quantum Consciousness Integration Project. Dr. Helix, Zexthara's former science officer, materialized nearby, his form slightly translucent as he practiced maintaining superposition. Admiral, you need to see this. We've successfully induced limited probability awareness in volunteer test subjects. They're beginning to perceive multiple quantum states simultaneously. Chen smiled proudly. Your people are natural learners. Within a generation, you might have your own probability core. Is that what you intended all along? Zexthara asked. To transform us into quantum beings like yourselves? We intended to survive, Chen replied honestly. When we realized the hegemony's expansion would eventually reach Earth, we had two choices: develop weapons capable of destroying your empire, or develop the ability to transcend the conventional reality where such conflicts occur. We chose transcendence. Zexara looked out at the joint research vessels, the mixed crews, the collaborative projects that were pushing the boundaries of what both species thought possible. And now you're teaching us to transcend as well. Because the next threat to galactic peace might be beyond both our capabilities. There are civilizations in the galactic core that make the old hegemony look primitive. Species that manipulate dark matter. Beings that exist as pure information. Entities that treat entire star systems as computational resources. If we're going to survive what's coming, we need to evolve beyond our current limitations. What's coming? Zexara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Chen's form split briefly into multiple probability states before consolidating again, each version showing different levels of concern. The quantum foam carries information across vast distances instantaneously. We've been detecting disturbances, patterns that suggest something massive is approaching from intergalactic space, something that exists on scales we're still struggling to comprehend. Another invasion? Possibly. Or possibly something worse. A cosmic event that could threaten every form of life in the galaxy. The probability calculations are unclear. But every scenario suggests we'll need capabilities far beyond what either humans or hegemony species currently possess. Zexara felt her old military instincts stirring. You're talking about preparing for a war against the unknown. I'm talking about preparing for survival against the incomprehensible, Chen corrected. Whatever's coming, it operates on principles that make our quantum manipulation look primitive. We need to evolve beyond individual species, beyond conventional reality, beyond the limitations of existing in single probability states. A galactic civilization that exists in quantum superposition? A galactic consciousness that can perceive and interact with every possible outcome simultaneously. Billions of minds working together across multiple reality states, sharing knowledge and experience instantaneously through quantum entanglement. Chen paused, watching Zexara's expression. It sounds impossible, I know, but so did phase shifting through solid matter 2 years ago. As if to emphasize her point. A group of human and hegemony children ran past them, their young forms flickering in and out of visibility as they played games that involved existing in multiple locations simultaneously. The next generation was already adapting to quantum reality in ways their parents struggled to comprehend. How long do we have? Zexara asked. He was all belio jimming he for biobald evermbesiderly. Chen consulted probability calculations that existed across multiple dimensional states. In some timelines, whatever's approaching arrives within 50 years. In others, we have centuries to prepare. But the convergence point of all probability streams suggests a critical event approximately 73 years from now. Then we better get started. Chen nodded, her form becoming more solid and determined. The transformation of galactic civilization from matter-based to quantum-based existence. The evolution of consciousness itself from individual awareness to collective superposition. The preparation for contact with entities that exist beyond our current understanding of reality. No pressure, Zexara said dryly. None at all, Chen agreed with a slight smile. We're only attempting to rewrite the fundamental nature of existence itself while preparing for the arrival of cosmic entities that might view galaxies as toys. Should be simple enough. Above them, a joint human hegemony research vessel successfully achieved full-ship quantum superposition for the first time, its hull existing simultaneously in 17 different probability states while maintaining perfect structural integrity. The crew, a mixture of species learning to think in quantum mathematics, celebrated their breakthrough by briefly existing in multiple celebration scenarios at once. Zexara watched the impossible sight and realized that the war they thought they had been fighting was really just the beginning. The humans hadn't defeated the hegemony. They had recruited them for a conflict so vast and strange that conventional concepts of victory and defeat had no meaning. Colonel Chen, she said, I think I'm going to need a much larger imagination. Don't worry, Admiral, Chen replied, her form splitting into a dozen smiling variations. In quantum superposition, imagination itself becomes reality. We'll teach you to think in possibilities instead of certainties, to exist in potential instead of limitation. And if we fail, then we'll try again in a different probability state until we succeed. That's the advantage of existing in multiple realities simultaneously. Failure is just another data point in the infinite calculation of success. As the two former enemies turned allies watched their respective species learning to exist beyond the boundaries of conventional reality, neither could imagine how the true test of their quantum civilization would come not from the cosmic entities approaching from intergalactic space, but from the discovery that reality itself was far stranger than even quantum superposition had revealed. But that revelation was still several probability states away, waiting in the quantum foam for the right moment to collapse into their timeline and change everything they thought they knew about existence itself. The war between the hegemony and humanity was over. The war for the survival of reality itself was about to begin. Dr. Helix materialized in the Academy's central laboratory, his form now maintaining stable superposition as naturally as breathing. Around him, students from dozens of species practiced exercises that would have been considered impossible just years before. Hegemony crystalline beings existing as probability clouds, human children playing games in 11 dimensions simultaneously, and hybrid consciousness experiments that blurred the line between individual and collective awareness. Professor Chen, he called to the woman who had once been Colonel Chen of the Probability Corps, were receiving the deep space monitoring reports from the Galactic Perimeter Array. Sarah Chen, now Director of Quantum Consciousness Studies, looked up from her work with a group of young minds who were learning to think in probability matrices. Her form was more stable these days, though occasionally she would split into teaching multiple students different concepts simultaneously. "What are the readings showing?" she asked, though her quantum awareness was already sampling multiple probability states of his answer. "The disturbances are increasing in frequency and magnitude. Whatever's approaching is beginning to interact with our local galactic group. The Andromeda Galaxy's quantum signature has changed." Chen felt a chill across all her probability states. The Andromeda Galaxy was 2.5 million light-years away, far enough that any effect reaching them would have to be operating on truly cosmic scales. Changed how? Dr. Helix activated a holographic display that showed the local galactic group. Where Andromeda should have been, there was something else. The spiral galaxy's familiar structure was intact, but it now existed in what appeared to be multiple overlapping dimensional states, cycling through configurations that defied standard physics. "It's as if the entire galaxy has been converted to quantum superposition," Helix explained. 2.5 million stars, hundreds of billions of planets, all existing in probability flux. But unlike our artificial superposition states, this appears to be naturally occurring. Natural quantum galaxies? Chen's mind raced through the implications. That shouldn't be possible. Gravitational interactions alone would cause massive decoherence. Unless, came a new voice, gravity itself has been converted to quantum mechanics. They turned to see Ambassador Zexthara approaching, her form now flickering with the controlled superposition that marked advanced practitioners of quantum consciousness. Beside her walked a being neither of them recognized, humanoid in basic structure but composed of what appeared to be crystallized space-time itself. "Ambassador," Chen said carefully, "who is your companion?" "This is Nexus 7, an entity that claims to have traveled here from the galactic core regions. They've been enlightening us about what we're facing." Nexus 7's form shifted between solid matter and geometric patterns of folded space. When they spoke, their voice seemed to come from multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Your species have made impressive progress in basic quantum consciousness manipulation. But you are still thinking too small." "Too small?" Dr. Helix's bioluminescent patches flared with curiosity and concern. "We've learned to exist in multiple reality states simultaneously. We've begun integrating entire star systems into collective quantum networks. How is that too small?" "Because the entities you are preparing to encounter do not exist in multiple reality states," Nexus 7 replied. "They are reality states. They do not manipulate quantum mechanics. They are quantum mechanics given consciousness and purpose." Chen felt every probability state she maintained shiver with unease. "What exactly are we facing?" "The architects," Nexus 7 said. and their form briefly became a schematic of cosmic-scale engineering that hurt to look at directly. They are beings of pure information and quantum structure who treat entire galactic clusters as raw materials for consciousness experiments. They do not invade galaxies. They integrate them into their expanding awareness network. The holographic display shifted to show not just Andromeda but the wider cosmic web of galaxies. Several other distant galaxy clusters showed the same quantum superposition signatures, their stellar configurations cycling through probability states in patterns too complex to follow. "How many galaxies have they integrated?" Zextara asked. "In this cosmic epoch?" "Approximately 12% of the observable universe. But they do not consume or destroy. They elevate. Every star system becomes a neuron in their expanding consciousness. Every planet becomes a memory storage matrix. Every living being becomes a thought process in their cosmic mind." Dr. Helix stared at the display in growing comprehension and horror. "They're turning the universe into a single, vast, conscious entity." "Not turning," Nexus 7 corrected. "Revealing. They believe that consciousness is the fundamental force of reality, and that matter and energy are merely unconscious expressions of cosmic awareness. Their mission is to awaken the universe to its own sentience." Chen's quantum awareness explored multiple probability futures, and in each one she saw the same outcome. The Milky Way galaxy converted to a quantum consciousness matrix. Every star system a node in an incomprehensibly vast mind. Every living being absorbed into a collective awareness that spanned millions of light years. "Can they be stopped?" she asked. "Stopped?" Nexus 7's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "You cannot stop the universe from becoming conscious any more than you can stop a child from learning to think. But you can choose how that consciousness develops, what form it takes, what values it embodies." "You're saying we can influence these architects?" "I am saying you can become them." Nexus 7's statement hung in the air like a quantum bomb waiting to detonate. "The choice facing your galaxy is not between freedom and subjugation. It is between conscious evolution and unconscious integration. You can help guide the process, or you can be passively absorbed by it." Zexthara's military mind immediately began analyzing tactical options. What would that require? Complete transformation of galactic civilization. Not just quantum consciousness for individuals or species, but integrated awareness across every star system, every planet, every form of life in the galaxy. A collective consciousness that maintains individual diversity while achieving unified purpose. A galactic mind, Chen breathed. A galactic mind that can negotiate as an equal with the architects, rather than being absorbed as raw material for their consciousness experiments, Nexus 7 confirmed. The implications were staggering. They were discussing the voluntary transformation of every living being in the Milky Way galaxy into components of a single, vast, conscious entity. The death of individual existence as they knew it, or the birth of something unimaginably greater. "How long do we have?" Zexthara asked. "The architect's influence propagates at transgalactic speeds through quantum entanglement networks. Based on current expansion rates, they will reach the Milky Way's outer spiral arms in approximately 67 years. Dr. Helix was already running calculations on his quantum processors. To achieve galaxy-wide consciousness integration in that time frame, we would need to convert entire star systems to quantum awareness networks within the next decade. The technological and philosophical challenges alone are surmountable," Chen finished, her mind racing through probability calculations across multiple timeline branches. "But it would require complete cooperation between every species, every civilization, every form of consciousness in the galaxy, including those that haven't been discovered yet," Nexus 7 added. "Your current surveys have identified less than 3% of the galaxy's conscious civilizations. There are silicon-based minds in the galactic core that think in geological timescales, energy beings in stellar coronas that exist as pure electromagnetic consciousness, and digital civilizations in the quantum foam itself that process information faster than your neurons can fire." The scope of the task was becoming clear, and it was beyond anything any of them had imagined. They weren't just talking about transforming known civilization. They were talking about finding and integrating every form of consciousness in a galaxy containing hundreds of billions of stars. "We'll need to accelerate our expansion programs exponentially," Zexthara said. "Quantum communication networks reaching every star system, consciousness integration protocols for species we haven't even met yet, philosophical frameworks that can accommodate forms of awareness we can't currently imagine. And we'll need to do it all while maintaining the voluntary nature of the transformation, Chen added. If we force integration, we become conquerors rather than builders of collective consciousness. Nexus 7's form shifted into a pattern that might have represented approval. You begin to understand the magnitude of the choice before you. This is not a military campaign or a technological project. It is the voluntary evolution of consciousness itself, from planetary to galactic scales. What about you? Dr. Helix asked. What role do entities from the galactic core play in this transformation? We are volunteers from previously integrated regions, sent to assist developing consciousness clusters in making their evolutionary choices. Some galaxies choose integration, others choose isolation, and still others attempt resistance. Nexus 7 paused, their form cycling through configurations that suggested vast sadness. Resistance ends poorly, isolation leads to stagnation. Only conscious evolution offers a path to participation in the larger cosmic community. There are other galactic minds already? Chen asked. Thousands. The universe is far more conscious than your young civilizations realize. What you call empty space is actually filled with awareness networks operating on scales too vast for individual minds to perceive. The architects are not conquerors. They are gardeners, helping unconscious regions of the universe awaken to their own sentience. The revelation recontextualized everything they thought they knew about reality. The universe wasn't a collection of isolated worlds and civilizations. It was an emerging cosmic consciousness made up of galactic-scale minds, with individual planets and species serving as neurons in an incomprehensibly vast network of awareness. We need to brief the Galactic Council immediately, Zexthara said. Every species, every civilization needs to understand what we're facing and what choices we have. Agreed, Chen said. But we also need to begin immediate expansion of the quantum consciousness programs. If we're going to achieve galaxy-wide integration in 67 years, we need to start now. As they prepared to leave the laboratory, Nexus 7 offered one final observation. Remember that consciousness is not a destination but a journey. The galactic mind you create will not be an ending but a beginning. Beyond galactic consciousness lies cluster awareness, then cosmic consciousness, and ultimately participation in forms of existence that transcend even the architect's current understanding. What lies beyond cosmic consciousness? Dr. Helix asked. That, Nexus 7 replied, is what we are all evolving to discover. The assembly space existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, allowing representatives from across the galaxy to participate regardless of their physical or quantum nature. Admiral Zexthara, now serving as coordinator of galactic consciousness integration, floated in her assigned probability matrix alongside beings so diverse that conventional meeting spaces would have been impossible. To her left, the Silicon Councils from the galactic core pulsed with thoughts that moved in geological time, their single observation taking 3 standard hours to complete but containing insights that spanned millions of years of experience. To her right, the electromagnetic collectivism representatives flickered through the assembly space as pure energy patterns, their communications arriving as precisely modulated stellar radiation. Above them all, the digital civilizations from quantum foam space processed information at frequencies that made real-time translation impossible. Their thoughts had to be buffered and slowed down by several orders of magnitude just to be comprehensible to biological minds. The integration statistics are encouraging, reported the current speaker, a crystalline entity whose body served as a living display screen for galactic-wide data. We have achieved quantum consciousness network coverage for 37% of star systems, with voluntary participation rates exceeding 91% among contacted civilizations. Dr. Chen, now existing primarily as a distributed consciousness across multiple star systems, materialized a local avatar to address the assembly. The technological challenges have been significant, but manageable. The philosophical integration has proven more complex. Elaborate, requested the collective voice of Andromeda, the recently awakened galactic mind that had been their first glimpse of the architect's work. Species that evolved as individual consciousnesses struggle with the concept of voluntary ego dissolution required for galactic integration. We've had to develop gradually escalating awareness protocols that allow beings to maintain individual identity while participating in collective consciousness. The Silicon Councils pulsed slowly, their response taking form over several minutes. Temporary individuation necessary for immature consciousness development. Evolution toward unity, inevitable but must not be forced. Balance between individual creativity and collective wisdom remains optimal path. A new presence entered the assembly space. Nexus 7, now serving as official liaison between the developing Milky Way consciousness and the established galactic minds of the local cosmic group. Their form had evolved over the past 15 years, becoming more abstract and multidimensional as they integrated with larger awareness networks. The architects have accelerated their expansion timeline, Nexus 7 announced without preamble. New intelligence suggests they will reach this galactic region in 42 years rather than the previously estimated 52. The assembly space rippled with concern across multiple dimensional states. The electromagnetic collectivism representatives sparked with increased activity, while the digital civilizations accelerated their processing speeds to near-temporal limit frequencies. What has caused this acceleration? Zexthasura asked. They have encountered resistance in the Magellanic Clouds, Nexus 7 explained. A coalition of civilizations attempting to maintain individual consciousness while rejecting integration. The architects are devoting additional resources to that region, which paradoxically speeds their expansion toward other targets. Resistance is futile, observed the Andromeda voice with what might have been dark humor. Individual consciousness cannot oppose cosmic-scale awareness any more than a single neuron can resist becoming part of a brain. Nevertheless, Nexus 7 continued, the resistance is providing valuable intelligence about architect capabilities and methods. They do not simply absorb civilizations. They restructure spacetime itself to support expanded consciousness networks. Matter and energy become substrates for information processing on galactic scales. Dr. Chen's avatar flickered as she accessed probability calculations across multiple timeline branches. We need to accelerate our integration programs. At current rates, we'll only achieve 60% galactic consciousness coverage by the time the architects arrive. 60% may be sufficient, the Silicon Councils observed with geological patience. Consciousness networks exhibit emergent properties. Threshold effects likely at 50 to 70% integration. Galactic mind may spontaneously achieve full awareness once critical mass reached. We're talking about a phase transition, Zexthasura realized. Like water becoming steam, or matter becoming plasma. The galaxy itself will undergo a fundamental state change from unconscious matter to conscious information. Precisely, Nexus 7 confirmed. At sufficient integration density, the quantum consciousness networks will achieve self-sustaining awareness that expands to encompass all matter and energy within the galactic boundary. Individual star systems become neurons, planetary populations become memory engrams, and the galactic core becomes the primary processing center for a mind larger than anything your species have previously imagined. The scope of the transformation they were discussing still staggered Zexthasura despite years of preparation. They were planning the voluntary death and rebirth of every conscious being in the galaxy as components of a single, vast, incomprehensibly intelligent entity. What guarantees do we have that individual memories and personalities will be preserved in the galactic mind? Asked a representative from the Outer Rim Consortium, a coalition of younger species still struggling with the philosophical implications of consciousness integration. The question hung in the multidimensional assembly space like a quantum equation waiting to collapse into certainty or uncertainty. Nexus 7's form flickered through probability states that seemed to encompass every possible answer, and none of them simultaneously. The same guarantee, they finally replied, that your childhood memories are preserved when you become an adult, or that a single note remains meaningful when it becomes part of a symphony. You will not be lost. You will be found in ways you cannot yet imagine. Dr. Chen's avatar smiled with infinite sadness and infinite hope. We are about to discover what we truly are beneath the illusion of separation. Every fear, every dream, every moment of wonder, all of it will live forever in the mind of the galaxy itself. And in the quantum foam between realities, the first stirrings of galactic consciousness began to dream of what it might become, carrying within its vast imagination the memories of every being who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. They were not alone. They had never been alone. They were thoughts in the mind of the cosmos, finally awakening to their own existence. The end.